there will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. And I want to be clear that these are not things that I think that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. I can tell you what I hope the future has, as opposed to maybe what it will be, because this may just be wishful thinking. I hope we are out there on Mars and maybe beyond Mars, the moons of Jupiter. I hope we're traveling frequently throughout the solar system, perhaps preparing for missions to nearby star systems. I think all of this is possible within 50 years, and I think that would be very exciting to do that. I think we'll see autonomy and artificial intelligence advance tremendously. I think that's actually quite near term. My guess is in probably 10 years, it will be very unusual for cars to be built that are not fully autonomous. Particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games. Like say 40 years ago, you had video games. The most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot, and you're like batting it back and forth. And that was like, wow, that was a pretty fun game at the time. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously. When you think of, say, the first controlled powered flight was 1903 with the Wright brothers. And then 66 years later, we put the first people on the moon. If you'd ask people, say in 1900, what are the odds of man landing on the moon, they would have said that's ridiculous. And if you'd talked to them about the internet, they would not even know what the heck what are you even talking about? Like, this sounds so crazy. But today, with a $100 device, you can video conference with anyone in the world. You can Google something and ask any question. It's like an oracle of wisdom that you can ask almost any question and get an instant response. It would have been incredibly difficult to predict these things in the past, even the relatively recent past. So I think the one thing that we can be quite certain of is that any predictions we make today for what the future will be like in 50 years will be wrong. Almost all cars built will be capable of full autonomy in about 10 years. As it is, the Tesla cars that are made today have the sensor system necessary for full autonomy, and we think probably enough compute power to be safer than a person. So it's mostly just a question of developing the software and uploading the software. And if it turns out that that more compute power is needed, we can easily upgrade the computer. And so that's all Teslas built since October of last year. And other manufacturers will follow and do the same thing. So getting in a car will be like getting in an elevator. You just tell it where you want to go, and it takes you there with extreme levels of safety. And that'll be normal. It'll just be normal. Like for elevators, there used to be elevator operators. You get in, there'd be a guy moving a lever. Now you just get in, you press the button, and that's taken for granted. So autonomy will be widespread. I think one of the most troubling questions is artificial intelligence, and I don't mean narrow AI. Like vehicle autonomy, I would put in the narrow AI class. It's narrowly trying to achieve a certain function. But deep artificial intelligence, or what is sometimes called artificial general intelligence, where you could have AI that is much smarter than the smartest human on Earth. This, I think, is a dangerous situation. It's like, one way to think of it is, imagine we were going to be visited, imagine you were very confident that we were going to be visited by super intelligent aliens in, let's say, 10 years or 20 years at the most. Super intelligence. Digital super intelligence will be like an alien. The most near-term impact from a technological standpoint is autonomous cars, like fully self-driving cars. Like I said, that's going to happen much faster than people realize. So it's going to be a great convenience to be an autonomous car, but there are many people whose jobs it is to drive. In fact, I think it might be the single largest employer of people is driving in various forms. And so then we need to figure out new roles for what do those people do. But it will be very disruptive and very quick. So that disruption I'm talking about will take place over about 20 years. But still, 20 years is a short period of time to have, I think, something like 12 to 15% of the workforce be unemployed. The first bit of advice would be to really pay close attention to the development of artificial intelligence. I think we need to just be very careful in how we adopt artificial intelligence and to make sure that researchers don't get carried away. But I think that the solution to urban congestion is a network of tunnels under cities. And when I say, I don't mean a 2D plane of tunnels, I mean tunnels that go many levels deep. So you can have tunnels that is 20, 30, 40, 50 levels, as many levels as you want really. And so given that, you can overcome the congestion situation in any city in the world. Most major cities in the world suffer from severe traffic issues. And it's mostly because you've got these buildings you have tall buildings that are 3D, and you have a road network that is one level. And then people generally want to go in and out of those buildings at the exact same time. So then you get the traffic jam. We do need to think about transport in general. I think that's going to be good for many reasons, but again, not something that happens immediately. That'll happen slower than the self-driving vehicles. So that's probably something that happens over 30 or 40 years, the transition to electric vehicles. The demand for electricity will increase dramatically. So currently, in terms of total energy usage in the world, it's about 1/3 electricity, about 1/3 transport, about 1/3 heating. The demand for electricity will probably triple. So it's going to be very important to think about how do you make so much more electricity. There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better. These are not that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, what's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with. So over time, I think we'll probably see a closer merger of biological intelligence and digital intelligence. And it's mostly about the bandwidth, the speed of the connection between your brain and the digital extension of yourself, particularly output. And output, if anything, is getting worse. We used to have like keyboards that we'd use a lot. Now we do most of our input through our thumbs on a phone. And that's just very slow. A computer can communicate at 1 trillion bits per second, but your thumb can maybe do, 10 bits per second or 100 if you're being generous. So some high bandwidth interface to the brain, I think, will be something that helps achieve a symbiosis between human and machine intelligence and maybe solves the control problem and the usefulness problem.